Welcome. Today, we're diving into the incredible biological engineering that allows fish to breathe, to truly thrive, in an environment where oxygen is surprisingly hard to come by. So, here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the fundamental problem of breathing underwater. Then, we'll get into the anatomy of the gill and explore the brilliant countercurrent principle that makes it all work. After that, we'll compare how bony fish move water with the unique strategies of sharks and rays, and then we'll wrap it all up. All right, first things first. To really appreciate how amazing fish are, we need to understand just how tough it is to breathe underwater from a pure physics and chemistry standpoint. At its core, respiration is pretty simple, right? It's all about getting oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. But the medium you're in, whether it's air or water, completely changes the game and has a huge impact on how much energy it takes. And this chart really tells the story. Look at the difference here. Air is just packed with oxygen, about 209 milliliters per liter. But water, even fresh water at its best, has less than 7. That's a staggering difference. We're talking over 30 times less oxygen available for a fish. It means they have to process a huge amount of water just to get the oxygen they need. And it's not just about the amount of oxygen. Water itself is just difficult. It's about 800 times denser than air and 50 times more viscous, or thicker. Think about trying to move through water versus moving through air. It takes way more effort. So for a fish, every single breath is a much bigger workout than it is for us. So, fish are up against this huge challenge. How on earth do they solve it? Well, it all comes down to the hardware, the gills. Honestly, the gill is an absolute masterpiece of biological engineering. The entire structure is designed for one primary goal, to create the largest possible surface area for gas exchange. Let's zoom in and see how they pull this off. It's all built in layers. You start with these strong, bony gill arches that provide the main support. Coming off each arch are 2 rows of delicate, V-shaped gill filaments. But here's where it gets crazy. Each of those filaments is covered in thousands of microscopic folds called secondary lamellae. That is the spot. That's where the real action happens. And the fact that these lamellae are ridiculously thin is the whole key. This minimizes the distance oxygen has to travel to get from the water into the blood. The blood itself flows through these tiny channels held open by what are called pillar cells. It's a system just built for incredible efficiency at a microscopic level. Okay, so having a massive surface area is great, but that's only half the story. The real secret sauce, the software that runs this whole operation, is something called the countercurrent principle. The idea is so simple, but it's absolutely brilliant. The water flows over the gill lamellae in one direction, while the blood inside flows in the exact opposite direction. This setup ensures that the water always has a slightly higher oxygen concentration than the blood right next to it, all the way across the gill. This maintains a constant diffusion gradient, so oxygen is always moving into the blood. And the result is just incredible, an 80% extraction efficiency. To put that in perspective, if the water and blood flowed in the same direction, they'd hit a 50-50 balance pretty quickly, and gas exchange would just stop. You could never get more than 50% of the oxygen out. So this countercurrent mechanism isn't just a neat trick, it is arguably the single most important adaptation for living an active life in water. So fish have the hardware, the gills, and the software, the countercurrent exchange. But how do you actually power the system and keep a steady flow of water moving across those gills? Well, let's take a look at bony fish first. Most bony fish use this really slick two-phase system called the double pump. Here's how it works. First, the fish opens its mouth and lowers the floor of its mouth, or buccal cavity. This creates negative pressure that sucks water in. Then, as the mouth starts to close, the gill cover area, the opercular cavity, expands, which pulls that water across the gills. Finally, everything contracts, forcing the water out from under the gill covers. This whole coordinated movement creates a nearly continuous, one-way flow of water, maximizing the time for gas exchange. Now, sharks and rays, the elasmobranchs, they play by a different set of rules. They don't have that protective bony gill cover, which means they've had to evolve some slightly different strategies to get the job done. They basically have 2 main playbooks. A lot of bottom-dwelling species, like nurse sharks, use a simpler buccal pump. They actively pull water in through their mouth and spiracles and then push it over their gills. But the more active, open-water swimmers use something called ram ventilation.
They just swim with their mouths open, and their forward motion literally rams water over their gills. Now, for some of these highly active sharks, this reliance on ram ventilation is absolute. They're known as obligate ram ventilators because they've actually lost the ability to pump water with their mouths. For a great white, a mako, or even a giant whale shark, to stop swimming is to suffocate. Constant motion is literally life. It's a fascinating evolutionary trade-off. You get incredible efficiency, but you can never, ever stop to rest.
Okay, let's pull all this together now and do a quick review of these amazing respiratory systems. This table lays out the key distinctions really well. You've got the operculum versus gill slits, the different pumps, but the big takeaway here is the difference in flow. The bony fish's double pump creates a continuous flow, while the shark's buccal pump results in a more start and stop or pulsatile flow. That difference in continuity really impacts overall efficiency. So to sum it all up, we've seen that water is a really tough place to try and breathe, that fish have evolved this whole suite of sophisticated tools to get the job done, from the incredible surface area of the gills to the genius of countercurrent flow and the specialized pumps that keep water moving. It's all finely tuned to let them thrive. And this leaves us with a final question to think about. If ram ventilation is so efficient, why aren't all fish doing it? The answer reminds us that you can't just look at physiology in a vacuum. You have to think about an animal's entire lifestyle and ecology. It shows us that in evolution, every adaptation is a trade-off. There's no single perfect answer for everyone. Thanks for watching.